Good people, we all know what it feels like to be somewhere that you are not wanted. All you do is you feel that energy in the room and you get up and you go because you know something is wrong. But let's be clear, when you get up and go, people are going to be upset. So we're going to be exploring today what happens when Jacob felt uncomfortable after so many years serving Laban, and what was Laban's response when he got up and left in the middle of the night. So let's jump into it. We are talking about Genesis 31. We are kind of catching up from last week. I didn't get to do the Bible study, so I'm doing two this week. So this is Genesis 31, and on another day, probably Saturday, I will do Genesis 32. So let's move forward with catching up and seeing where we are with Jacob. Let's be reminded that he has had children. Up to this point, he has had 10 children, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 11 if I'm not counting all of them, but he has pretty much had most of his children. He is still in the land where he met Rachel and Leah and married them. He's still in there working for their father. And so we are kind of picking up right where that happens. And so we are going to I'm going to share my screen and we're just going to read through Genesis 31. This is quite a long chapter, but when we walk through, we won't walk through every single detail of every single verse because some of it is just like storyline kind of stuff, but it is a longer chapter than what we might have been accustomed to with like about 35 to 40 verses. This is like 55 verses or something. So let me share my screen and we're going to jump right into it, guys. I hope you are having a great one. I hope you are ready to understand how to how to have relationships with people, and you know people usually want you to do what they want you to do, but they don't want you to do what's best for you, and that's kind of what we're talking about today. All right, so my screen is being shared. We're gonna jump into it, and it starts with verse 1. But Jacob soon learned that Laban's sons were grumbling about him. Jacob has robbed our father of everything, they said. He has gained all his wealth at our father's expense. And Jacob began to notice a change in Laban's attitude toward him. Then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your father and grandfather and to your relatives there, and I will be with you. So Jacob called Rachel and Leah out to the field where he was watching his flock. He said to them, I have noticed that your father's attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. You know how hard I have worked for your father, but he has cheated me, changing my wages 10 times. But God has not allowed him to do me any harm. For if he said the speckled animals will be your wages, the whole flock began to produce speckled young. And when he changed his mind and said the striped animals will be your wages, then the whole flock produced striped young. In this way, God has taken your father's animals and given them to me. One time, during the mating season, I had a dream and saw that the male goats mating with the females were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then in my dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob. And I replied, yes, here I am. The angel said, look up, and you will see that only the streaked, speckled, and spotted males are mating with the females of your flock. For I have seen how Laban has treated you. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel, the place where you anointed the pillar of stone and made your vow to me. Now get ready and leave this country and return to the land of your birth. Rachel and Leah responded, that's fine with us. We won't inherit any of our father's wealth anyway. He has reduced our rights to those of foreign women. And after he sold us, he wasted the money you paid him for us. All the wealth God has given you from our father legally belongs to us and our children. So go ahead and do whatever God has told you. So Jacob put his wives and children on camels, and he drove all his livestock in front of him. He packed all the belongings he had acquired in Padam Aram and set out for the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac lived. At the time they left, Laban was some distance away, shearing his sheep. Rachel stole her father's household idols and took them with her. Jacob outwitted Laban the Aramean, for they set out secretly and never told Laban they were leaving. So Jacob took all his possessions with him and crossed the Euphrates River, heading for the hill country of Gilead. 3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. So he gathered a group of his relatives and set out in hot pursuit. He caught up with Jacob 7 days later in the hill country of Gilead. But the previous night, God had appeared to Laban, the Aramean, in a dream and told him, I'm warning you, leave Jacob alone. Laban caught up with Jacob as he was camped in the hill country of Gilead, and he set up his camp not far from Jacob's. What do you mean by deceiving me like this? Laban demanded. How dare you drag my daughters away like prisoners of war? Why did you slip away secretly? Why did you deceive me? And why didn't you say you wanted to leave? I would have given you a farewell feast with singing and music accompanied by tambourines and harps. Why didn't you let me kiss my daughters and grandchildren and tell them goodbye? You have acted very foolishly. I could destroy you, but the God of your father appeared to me last night and warned me, leave Jacob alone. I can understand your feeling that you must go and your intense longing for your father's home, but why have you stolen my gods? I rushed away because I was afraid, Jacob answered. I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. But as for your gods, see if you can find them, and let the person who has taken them die. And if you find anything else that belongs to you, identify it before all these relatives of ours, and I will give it back. But Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the household idols. Laban went first into Jacob's tent to search there, then into Leah's, and then the tents of the two servant wives. But he found nothing. Finally, he went into Rachel's tent. But Rachel had taken the household idols and hidden them in her camel saddle, and now she was sitting on them. When Laban had thoroughly searched her tent without finding them, she said to her father, Please, sir, forgive me if I don't get up for you. I'm having my monthly period. So Laban continued his search, but he could not find the household idols. Then Jacob became very angry and he challenged Laban. What's my crime? He demanded. What have I done wrong to make you chase after me as though I were a criminal? You have rummaged through everything I own. Now show me what you found that belongs to you. Set it out here in front of us, before our relatives, for all to see. Let them judge between us. For 20 years I have been with you, caring for your flocks. In all that time, your sheep and goats never miscarried. In all those years, I never used a single ram of yours for food. If any were attacked and killed by wild animals, I never showed you the carcass and asked you to reduce the count of your flock. No, I took the loss myself. You made me pay for every stolen animal, whether it was taken in broad daylight or in the dark of night. I worked for you through the scorching heat of the day and through cold and sleepless nights. Yes, for 20 years I slaved in your house. I worked for 14 years earning your two daughters, and then 6 more years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. In fact, if the God of my father had not been on my side, the God of Abraham and the fearsome God of Isaac, you would have sent me away empty handed. But God has seen your abuse and my hard work. That is why he appeared to you last night and rebuked you. Then Laban replied to Jacob, These women are my daughters, these children are my grandchildren, and these flocks are my flocks. In fact, everything you see is mine. But what can I do? What can I do now about my daughters and their children? So come, let's make a covenant, you and I, and it will be a witness to our commitment. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a monument. Then he told his family members, gather some stones. So they gathered stones and piled them in a heap. Then Jacob and Laban sat down beside the pile of stones to eat a covenant meal. To commemorate the event, Laban called the place Jegar Sahudatha, which means witness pile in Aramaic, and Jacob called it Galid, which means witness pile in Hebrew. Then Laban declared, This pile of stones will stand as a witness to remind us of the covenant we have made today. This explains why it was called Galid, witness pile, but it was also called Mizpah, which means watchtower. For Laban said, May the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this covenant when we are out of each other's sight. If you mistreat my daughters or if you marry other wives, God will see it even if no one else does. He is a witness to this covenant between us. See this pile of stones, Laban continued, and see this monument I have set between us. They stand between us as witness of our vows. I will never pass this pile of stones to harm you, and you must never pass these stones or this monument to harm me. I will call on the God of your ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of your grandfather Nahor to serve as a judge between us. Oh, my grandfather, excuse me, Nahor, to serve as a judge between us. So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice to God there on the mountain and invited everyone to a covenant feast. After they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain. Laban got up early the next morning and he kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. All right, so now we are going to jump over to our PowerPoint. Now I left the date up here because it was supposed to be last week and I'm about a week behind. So we are talking today though about Jacob's split with Laban. It reminds me similarly of how Lot and Abram at the time split. And it's necessary in life when we go through different seasons with different people that we may find ourselves having to part ways. And so, really, what the Bible teaches us is how to go about it in an amicable way and how situations build up. You don't just overreact to one situation and go your separate ways. Like, this is evidence that it was time that had passed. There were situations that had built up in order to warrant a splitting. But it was amicable at the end. So we are talking about that split today and how the relationship between Laban and Jacob evolved over time. So verse 1, it says, but Jacob soon learned that Laban's sons were grumbling about him. Jacob has robbed our father of everything, they said. He has gained all his wealth at our father's expense. And Jacob began to notice a change in Laban's attitude toward him. So what you have is this is a setup of what's going on in the background. So remember, last chapter we talked about how Jacob went to Laban and said, allow me to return to my father's land. Essentially, I have worked and you have, grown wealthy over all this time. Let me go. And so essentially that is the servitude that he had completed as far as earning the two wives. What he wanted was the wages now. And he wanted to work to earn his own flock, how to take care of his own household. He had been just caring for Laban's flock, but now he wanted something of his to call his own. So what the brothers are saying is that in him growing his own flock, he actually stole Laban's flock to make it his own flock. It's if these things were happening purposefully. And Jacob, this is going on behind the scenes with Laban's sons, right? They're talking about him kind of behind his back. They're looking at him sideways when he come by, like that kind of thing is going on. Jacob is noticing in Laban how his attitude with the two of them has changed. So he knows, there's something going on. There's a shift. So this is what it says in the previous chapter, what I was just kind of describing. This is what they had agreed to. Let me take my wives and children, for I have earned them by serving you, and let me be on my way. You certainly know how hard I have worked for you. So this is what Jacob told Laban. This is what Laban's response is. Please listen to me, Laban replied. I have become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you. Tell me how much I owe you, whatever it is, I'll pay it. And that's when Jacob agreed to, well, let me grow all the speckled and spotted animals will be mine, and you can keep the ones that are basically like pure color, like white. Okay, so that's what they agreed to. But what did Jacob's sons say? Jacob's sons was over here grumbling in this chapter, saying that Jacob has robbed our father of everything. But wait a minute, just a chapter before, Laban clearly identified Jacob as the reason as to why he was even wealthy. Laban said, I have become wealthy, for the Lord has blessed me because of you. So Laban's wealth is due to Jacob. Jacob is blessed through the Lord. Laban's wealth is not due to his own, it's due to Jacob. He was robbed. So you see how initially somebody can acknowledge the truth, but you get somebody in your ear and that kind of changes. Oh, he stole this and he stole that and he did this and he did that. No. Originally, you recognize the truth, but now it seems like that truth, your vision is clouded. And essentially, in this story, you will see how Jacob kind of reminds him of what he has done and how he is blessed and how he is covered, because that's what Laban knew before. But now that story is changed, and this is quite some time that has come. This is quite some years that have come between this, from when verse chapter 30 was going on versus chapter 31. But all it takes a little bit of time and a little bit of people in your ear for your story to change. Even though what you originally acknowledged was truth, we got to keep in mind what that truth is. But it's jealousy that allows us for our judgment to be clouded. So now the Lord is speaking to Jacob. So it says in verse 3, then the Lord said to Jacob, return to the land of your father and grandfather and to your relatives there, and I will be with you. Prior, in last chapter, in chapter 30, when Jacob had gone to Laban about the whole wage thing, he wanted to return home then, but the Lord had not released him to return home. It's almost like he was like preparing, knowing that at some point he was going to return home, because that was the promise. God was going to give him the word of when to return home. So he was going to be preparing to return home. Now the Lord is saying, return to the land of your father and grandfather. His father is Isaac. His grandfather is Abraham. And to your relatives there. Go to where you originally came from, to the land that I have promised to give your father and your grandfather. That is where you belong. And it says, and I will be with you. Now that's a good promise. Anything that the Lord tells us to do, we got to make sure that he has promised to be with us, because you cannot do anything without him. And there is a difference. There is such a thing as doing something because the Lord has instructed you to do it, but he's not with you, and doing it and he be with you. Two different things. So in verse 4, it goes on and it says, so Jacob called Rachel and Leah out to the field where he was watching his flock. He said to them, look, I have noticed that your father's attitude toward me has changed, but the God of my father has been with me. So he's kind of giving this introduction of like, this is what I want to talk to y'all about. Your father has changed, but my God has never left me. He's always been with me. He says in verse 6, you know how hard I have worked for your father, but he has cheated me, changing my wages 10 times. But God has not allowed him to do me any harm. That means every attempt that Laban had at trying to change his wages, trying to be spiteful and trying to basically come against the agreement that he had previously made to give him the speckled, spotted, and striped sheep. Every attempt that he has made to kind of go back on his word, God has never allowed Jacob to suffer due to Laban's decisions and his lack of judgment. And so Rachel and Leah know they've been there 14 years just for him to earn the two of them. They have been there an additional 6 years, which we will find out later, to work for these flocks. So this has happened over the course of 6 years, that he has changed his wages and cheated him 10 times. That took 6 years to happen. But in that 6 years, God has not allowed him to do me any harm. So what's happening is Jacob is recognizing the problem. First of all, he has an instruction. He's recognizing the problem and he's leading with, this is the problem. And this is what I have noticed has shifted. But he's still acknowledging what God has done for him in that time. We can have a problem. That's okay to acknowledge a problem. How do we address what God has done for us in spite of said problem? Problem is over here. Is God still keeping you? That's what you need to focus on. That's what you need to make sure you include, instead of everything being like a complaint. Because if he only had led with the problem, it would be like a complaint. So then verse 8 says, for if he said, the speckled animals will be your wages. This is the example of how Laban has cheated him. The speckled animals will be your wages. The whole flock began to produce speckled young. And when he changed his mind and said, the striped animals will be your wages, then the whole flock produced striped young. In this way, where the young are being produced, God has taken your father's animals and given them to me. Because every time Laban changed his mind, it didn't hurt Jacob. So you can't say, oh, well, now the spotted young are going to be yours, not the speckled. Well, they just started to produce spotted and not speckled. So that's why he's explaining how was it that Laban attempted to cheat me, but then it never harmed me. He's giving that explanation. One time during the mating season, he's still talking to Leah and Rachel. He says, I had a dream and saw that the male goats mating with the female goats were streaked, speckled, and spotted. Then in my dream, the angel of God said to me, Jacob. And I replied, yes, here I am. The angel said, look up, and you will see that only the streaked, speckled, and spotted males are mating with the females of your flock. For I have seen how Laban has treated you. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel, the place where you anointed the pillar of stone and made your vow to me. Now get ready and leave this country and return to the land of your birth. So Jacob is receiving, he's telling us that he's receiving all of this information in a dream on, what he should do and why it is that things have happened, because he is with him. He reminded him of who he is. I am the God who appeared to you at Bethel. We have this covenant relationship. I'm reminding you of said covenant relationship, and I'm letting you know that all of the things that have been happening are because I have allowed them to happen. Um, what your flock is producing is because that's what I am directing them to do, and that's how I'm directing them to produce. The the males are um, mating with the females, and it's only the males that are speckled, spotted, and streaked that are doing that. See how this is vengeance right here. For I have seen how Laban has treated you. We want to take on vengeance, and we would want to go and get correction for that. Oh, you haven't done me right. I'm taking you to court. I'm suing you. I'm doing XYZ. If you let the Lord do his work, he sees how such and such has treated you. Let them, they're going to catch what they're supposed to catch, essentially. Like they're going to get the punishment that they're supposed to get, because Laban literally lost out on his wealth because of how he treated Jacob. But he's going to blame Jacob for it. But he literally lost out on the wealth that he could have had he treated Jacob properly. But that is something that God is working out. He's seen how Laban has treated Jacob. So let God work that out. Jacob has no control really over how the flocks produce, because as much as he might try to put the poplar trees and the almond tree branches, he could strip them and put them in the water to make the water more fertile or whatever. Great. But what they produce and how they produce and what Laban does with that, that's all up to God. So I love that this is his like testimony that he's telling his wives. So then this is the wives' response. The wives say, that's fine with us. We won't inherit any of our father's wealth anyway. He has reduced our rights to those of foreign women. And after he sold us, he wasted the money you paid him for us. So they say, all the wealth God has given you from our father legally belongs to us and our children. So go ahead and do whatever God has told you. So this is giving us more information on how Laban deals. Laban received money, what is it called? A dowry, right? To give his daughters, both Rachel and Leah, were both his daughters, to Jacob. Well, he wasted that money. He has taken away also, not only did he waste that money, he has also taken away the rights that some daughters have, rights of like equal inheritance or some sort of inheritance rights of land, property, wealth, and all those things. Depending on like your culture, only males get it. But in this culture, obviously, it is more than just the male children or the oldest male that would get the inheritance. It would be shared amongst children. But they were even reduced to foreign women. And foreign women, typically in other countries' cultures, don't have the same rights and access. You can't go get a loan. You can't vote. Let's say you can't, like certain things you just can't do because you don't really have the same identity as someone who is native born. So it's almost like being treated like a slave in a way. So reduce. So it says he has reduced our rights to those of foreign women. So regular women, Aramean women, would be here. He's reduced our rights, so now they're down here. So they're like, it don't matter with us. You can go and we can go. We don't have to stay here, because what he has taken what is actually ours and given it away or wasted it, squandered it. we're not going to get any of this wealth. So what's the point in staying in this land when we don't get anything? And if we don't get anything, our children don't get anything. It's what they're really trying to say. So what they say at the end is all the wealth God has given you from our Father. So what He has transferred from the enemy essentially to the righteous, or the wicked to the righteous, legally belongs to us and our children. Legally, because they are His wives. So because they are no longer just the daughters of Laban, they are the wives of Jacob. Now they actually have an inheritance. It's really for their children, but they understand that. So they said, go ahead and do whatever God has told you to do. Whatever He told you, you go ahead and do that thing. So they're gonna return to the land of his birth. So it says, so Jacob put his wives and children on camels, and he drove all his livestock in front of him. He packed all the belongings he had acquired in Padam Aram and set out for the land of Canaan, where his father Isaac lived. It's not called Israel right now. You're too far advanced if you think in Israel. It's called the land of Canaan because the Canaanites and Hittites and all um, the lineage of Canaanites still live there. They still control the land. But Isaac's father lived there. Remember, Esau was there. Jacob's family that he had left is still there. At the time they left, Laban was some distance away shearing his sheep. Rachel stole her father's household idols and took them with her. So this kind of seems like it's random, but it's not random at all. All right, so essentially Jacob packs up everything. Now he does it at a time where he can move and other people are not gonna know where he's going or what he's doing because they're handling their business. This is the time of the year where the sheep have grown their hair, and so you shear the sheep and you sell the wool for people to make fabrics and blankets and all kind of materials with, right? So he's away handling his business. Now, where you do that at, like let's say a market or something, is not going to be necessarily at your home. So he was away handling his business, and it says some distance away. So a few days travel, quite some distance to where he's not going to know what's going on at home until he gets back from home. Then it also tells us Rachel stole her father's household idols and took them with her. Now, this is a specific person, Rachel. Remember, this is the one that Jacob is really in love with, not Leah. This is Rachel. She has had a child at this point. She had Joseph at this point. She decided to go steal her father's household idols and took them with her. Now, this is showing us bondage of idolatry. Rachel is married to Jacob. Jacob does not believe in idols. Jacob doesn't practice any idols. He lives in this country, but he does not have the same practices as far as faith and religion as these people have. Rachel has not fully let go of her old habits and ways, and what she has done is she is taking that because she has idols, or because she is you could say addicted to idolatry or practices idolatry, meaning literal idols. Let's say there is some type of thing that can be seen as an idol that you actually worship. So Rachel wanted to take what she worships from her father, and she wanted to take it with her in a new land with the new people. Now this says a lot about Rachel. This might be why Rachel didn't have children at first, because her heart might not have been completely submitted. I don't know. I'm speculating. I'm not saying that the text says that. I'm just looking at that because this tells us a lot about her character, a lot about their practices. A lot of people are like double-minded. Why would you take your father's household idols? What significance would they have to you in your heart for you to want to take them with you to a new land? You knowing your husband doesn't recognize them and doesn't practice this stuff. Why would you bring that with you? It's like, why would you carry a curse? But some people are not even willing to let go of their curses. They want to carry that curse with them. They cannot let go of something that God has clearly said to let go of. He clearly does not recognize them. Rachel knows that her husband even hears from God, and it has nothing to do with an idol. So the fact that she is willing to go and steal the idols to take them with her, it's just like a lot of questions that kind of come up about her character herself. So that's Rachel. All right. Now we're going into verse 20. So they done left. And so it says Jacob outwitted Laban the Aramean, for they set out secretly and never told Laban they were leaving. Remember, now Jacob, I'm sure, was very strategic about this. He didn't want them coming up to him trying to say anything because you know it was gonna be a fight. Now he gonna make it seem like it wasn't gonna be a fight. It was gonna be a fight. So Jacob, what he did was he let them go and handle their business, and he said, "All right, this is a great time. Now we can go. I have permission to go from the Lord. I'm going." So he set out secretly, never told Laban that they were leaving, and took all of his possessions with him and crossed the Euphrates River. So he's headed, what's that, west. Euphrates River. So this is like what we would consider present day Iran. I don't know what part it would have been that they were in, but you can definitely map that if you wanted to. Heading for the hill country of Gilead. So this is like borderland that they're headed to. So now we get into the portion of the chapter that talks about Laban pursuing Jacob. 3 days later, Laban was told that Jacob had fled. Wait a minute. Today, 3 days from now, which is going to be the weekend, Laban would have been notified, hey, Jacob is long gone. So he gathered a group of his relatives and set out in hot pursuit. It sounded like a race, like a police chase or something. He caught up with Jacob 7 days later in the hill country of Gilead. But the previous night, so what's happening? He hears that they've gone. Quickly, he gathers relatives and he's like, we got to go get them. So he caught up with Jacob. It took him 7 days to catch up to where they were, how much they had gone. Which seems like that would be 3 days. Well, I guess they would have been 6 days ahead. So yeah, it would like an extra. Okay, I'm trying to do the math in my head as to how further they had gone, but they would have been able to go faster than what Jacob would have been able to go because he had livestock, he got family, he got kids, all the things that he's traveling with. But Jacob catches up to him essentially in the place that he was headed to. Now, how did he know where he was headed? Well, it doesn't take a rocket science because he had already told Laban, hey, let me return to my home country. He knew where his home country was. He very much is aware of landscape. So he knew that they were going to the land of Canaan. So he knew what direction to travel in because everybody knows that Jacob wanted to go back home. The previous night, this is how God works. Like we our lives play out, and God is always kind of coming in, intercepting different things. He intercepts with Laban because the previous night it says God had appeared to Laban the Aramean in a dream. There's that dream. Always speaking to us in dreams. That's why, like for myself, I'm always trying to get my sleep right. Figure out what I'm watching, this into my eye gates and ear gates because it can impact your dreams. We want to get dreams from God. Well, in this dream, Laban, the Aramean, was told by God, I'm warning you, leave Jacob alone. This is telling us that Laban had ill intent towards going to Jacob. Like, what was he really finna do? He was not just about to roll up and be like, oh, so you decided to leave now. What's up with that? And he wasn't going to be nice about it. God warns him, leave Jacob alone. Stop bothering him. Stop cheating him. Stop pursuing him. Stop it. That's all Laban needs to know. Even though Laban has idols, he still understands who God the Most High is, Elohim. He understands that. So he is very much so going to be respectful of that instruction. So it says Laban caught up with Jacob as he was camped in the hill country of Gilead, and he set up his camp not far from Jacob's. He finds him, and he's like, what do you mean by deceiving me like this? Laban demanded. How dare you drag my daughters away like prisoners of war? Why did you slip away so secretly? Why did you deceive me? And why didn't you say you wanted to leave? I would have given you a farewell feast with singing and music accompanied by tambourines and harps. Now, at this point, I'm pretty sure Jacob is just staring at him like, is he for real right now? He keeps going. Why didn't you let me kiss my daughters and grandchildren and tell them goodbye? You have acted very foolishly. I could destroy you, but the God of your father appeared to me last night and warned me, leave Jacob alone. I can understand your feeling that you must go and your intense longing for your father's home, but why have you stolen my gods? There we go. All them other questions is irrelevant. He don't really care. He already knows that Jacob was not happy there. He could probably tell they did not have a great relationship. He just cheated him, and he want to know, why did he deceive him? No, what you really wanted to know, why did you steal my gods? That's really where your heart was at in this whole pursuit, is that you were so, you and your daughter, y'all so addicted to just the word that keeps coming up to me with these idols, that you wanted to pursue me just so you could come and you could challenge me about stealing your gods. Is that the first thing that Laban checked in his house, that his gods was gone? Probably, because probably when he walked in, he notices that whatever mantle or whatever they sit on, it's not there. And he hears that Laban is gone, and so he thinks that not Laban, he hears that Jacob is gone, so he thinks that Jacob took his idols. That that don't even make sense. So here go Jacob. I rushed away because I was afraid. I thought you would take your daughters from me by force. But as for your, and I love that he just settles all those questions with just those like two sentences, because the truth of the matter is that you were probably going to do that. So he just like acknowledges that you were going to probably take, I was afraid that you were going to take them by force. And he not trying to cover up nothing and say I'm sorry. He don't say I'm sorry nowhere right here. Nowhere. He just explains what he did, why he did what he did. And then he says, but as for your God, see if you can find them and let the person who has taken them die. That's how confident Jacob is. I ain't touched them things. And if somebody touched them, they should die too. Because why would you, don't have no business touching idols? He don't believe in that stuff. So he is thoroughly believing that they should not live for stealing something that is so futile and can't do anything for you. And if you find anything else that belongs to you, identify it before all these relatives of yours, and I will give it back. So Jacob at this point is trying to go to Canaan. And here come Laban trying to confront him about some foolishness. Instead of him apologizing and saying that I'm sorry for the way I treated you, that you felt like you had to run away and da 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 da, he want to come up here talking about some idols. So Jacob is like, hey, whatever you find that you believe is yours, I don't want it. You can have it. But Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen the household idols. I'm sure he would have been very upset had he found out that Rachel was the one who stole the idols. But she got to cover for her own sins. There's no sense in Jacob covering for her sins. So this is how it unfolds. Laban went first into Jacob's tent to search there. So each person has a tent, because remember, he has 4 different wives. So Jacob has a tent. Then he went into Leah's, then to the tents of the 2 servant wives. So that's Bilhah and Zilpah. He found nothing. He went into 4 different tents. Finally, he went into Rachel's tent. But Rachel had taken the household idols and hidden them in her camel saddle, and now she was sitting on them. Well, of course, because she has to figure out a way, otherwise she dies. When Laban had thoroughly searched her tent without finding them, she said to her father, please, sir, forgive me if I don't get up for you. I'm having my monthly period. So Laban continued his search, but he could not find the household idols. Now, I do not encourage lying. But I suppose if you're going to save your butt, you better have a good one. So what Rachel does is she uses the excuse of being on her monthly period. Not that this would not be something you would do. Like, obviously, it would be something normal for them not to interact, especially with someone of the opposite gender, when you are on your cycle. Which is why you will find that later in the book, later in the Bible, there's a rule that women who are on their cycles must go outside the community when they're on their cycles. I still wish that we kind of had that rule, because I would love to just check out for a few days while I'm on mine. But so in this case, though, she's saying, like, I'm sorry if I don't interact with you. Like, I'm kind of having this experience over here. And because men don't understand and they respect it, then he's like, okay, you stay over there. So she's able to get away with it. So she lied about being on her cycle so that she wouldn't die, which I can't say I blame her for, but like, also, why are you touching idols? Jacob didn't have to be so extreme and oh let them die, but that's how he felt. Because why would somebody want to take you? You came out here for idols? Like I probably would have said something like that too. Because you pursued me over some idols. Like that's really what it was. Okay. Then Jacob became very angry and he challenged Laban. What's my crime? He demanded. What have I done wrong to make you chase after me as though I were a criminal? You have rummaged through everything I own. Now show me what you found that belongs to you. Set it out here in front of us, before our relatives, for all to see. Let them judge between us. He went off because you really chased after me for some idols, and now you don't have nothing to show for it. And you done did all this for a big show. You done brought your relatives out here, and what we doing? So he continues because he is going to state his case because Laban came and he stated his case. So now Jacob's gonna state his case. Now he's given historically, this is what has happened. For 20 years I have been with you, caring for your flocks. In all that time, your sheep and goats never miscarried. Blessing number one. In all those years, I have never used a single ram of yours for food. Blessing number two. If any were attacked and killed by wild animals, I never showed you the carcass and asked you to reduce the count of your flock. No, I took the loss myself. You made me pay for every stolen animal, whether it was taken in broad daylight or in the dark of night. Blessing number three. He is laying out for him all the ways that he has helped his flock grow, how he has cared for them, and how he has taken on the brunt of this. Now, Laban is very, very selfish. But here's Jacob continuing because he's finna lay it out. I work for you through the scorching heat of the day and through the cold and sleepless nights. Yes, for 20 years, let's be clear, it's been 20 years, I have slaved in your house. I worked 14 years earning your two daughters, which, by the way, you tricked me into doing that. This is just a caveat. He never said that. And then 6 more years for your flock. And you changed my wages 10 times. In fact, this is where he gives credit where credit is due. If the God of my father had not been on my side, you know how that saying goes, if God had not been on my side, where would I be? This is what he's saying. If the God of my father had not been on my side, the God of Abraham and the fearsome God of Isaac, you would have sent me away empty-handed. Because he knows that that's the type of character that Laban has. So he's calling out that character. He's also mentioning here who God is. Not your God, as in little g God, as in idols God, my God. The God of my father, Abraham and Isaac, then I wouldn't have nothing because the true and living God has done this. Not you. This is not man's doing. But God has seen your abuse and my hard work. That's how he specifies it. This is how he lays it out. That is why he appeared to you last night and rebuked you. So he calling it all out. And sometimes we really hesitate with calling people out and calling a spade a spade. And I really want to encourage people to just call it out and call a spade a spade. When you have evidence on your side and you are in the opportunity to present said evidence, you need to present said evidence. If so many people keeping their mouths closed when it's time for them to speak up and speak out and advocate, but they're fearful of man and the man's retaliation and they don't say anything. And then they end up, not taking the opportunity to rebuke. Because sometimes when we are saying something to people, it don't have to be an argument. This is not an argument. Jacob is clearly stating his case because you have found nothing, but you done came and you done tore up our tents and you done did all this in hot pursuit like we're criminals over some idols, madam. Like, it's just not making sense. So he's reminding him, that is why he appeared to you last night and rebuked you. He rebuked him by saying, leave Jacob alone, because what his intent was to do was to come and cause harm. And he's reminding him, he don't want to do that. You don't want to do that because I don't think you want the war with me that's going to happen when you do that. And that's how we allow God to really get the vengeance, right? in full force. We allow God to get the vengeance. Not only do they learn not to mess with you really or mess with God's people, but they really learn who God is. And that's the whole purpose of it, is that people need to understand who God is. It's not yourself. You're not a God. Um, it's not people, it's not man, it's not any item that you can create. You cannot create a God and think that they are going to serve you. They're going to help you. It's only one true and living God. Then Laban replied to Jacob, oh, now he's trying to sound real sweet and humble. These women are my daughters. These children are my grandchildren. And these flocks are my flocks. In fact, everything you see is mine. But what can I do now about my daughters and their children? Oh, well, what can I do? I don't really agree with his statement because he said, in fact, everything you see is mine. No, no, no. Everything you see is mine because I work for it. Yes, these might have been your children, but they are my wives. These are your grandchildren, but they're my children. These flocks are my flocks because I worked for them and I bred them. So it's kind of like a twisted way that Laban is still trying to almost communicate the upper hand. But then he concedes, well, what can I do now about my daughters and their children? So come, let's make a covenant, you and I, and it will be a witness to our commitment. Let's have a peace treaty, essentially, is the covenant that he's asking for. Sounds very similar to Abram's treaty with King Abimelech's people. Sounds very similar to that. Like I think you've done this, and you're saying you haven't done it. Well, let's just call a treaty. I see that you have all these blessings over here, so I'm not going to mess with you because you are covered by God. So I'm gonna leave you over there. So in 45, it says, so Jacob took a stone and set it up as a monument. Then he told his family members, gather some stones. So he took a stone and set it up as a monument. He told his family members, gather some stones. So it's his stone and his other stones. So they gathered stones and piled them in a heap. Then Jacob and Laban sat down beside the pile of stones to eat a covenant meal. To commemorate the event, Laban called the place Jegar Sahuditha, which means witness pile in Aramaic, and Jacob called it Gilead, which means witness pile in Hebrew. All right, so they marked, essentially with the stones, they are marking a place where they are saying, we agree that we're going to respect this monument, we're going to respect this moment, we're going to make an agreement with each other. And when you make an agreement with each other, you sit down and eat a meal. That's why it's still common to where people who are in agreement, they're coming together, they kind of have a commemorative celebration, a meal to commemorate the moment. So that, you know, you're breaking bread with somebody who you are in agreement with. You're coming to this like agreement, and it's in a very neutral way because we're eating. 48 says, then Laban declared, this pile of stones will stand as a witness to remind us of the covenant we have made today. They're eating a meal at the pile of stones. It's a reminder of the covenant. This explains why it was called Gilead, which is witness pile, but it was also called Mizpah, which means watchtower. For Laban said, may the Lord keep watch between us to make sure that we keep this covenant when we are out of each other's sight. This covenant is in the covenant that they're about to explain they're going to make. God will see it, even if no one else does. Like, he is going to see whether or not we are abiding by the covenant, and we are going to suffer consequences or gain benefits or gain blessings based on us abiding by this covenant. So when people say like God is watching, it's kind of coming from story like stuff like this. Like, he is the watchtower. He is a witness to this covenant between us. He sees everything. See this pile of stones, Laban continued, and see this monument I have set between us. They stand between us as witnesses of our vows. This is the vow. I will never pass this pile of stones to harm you, and you must never pass these stones or this monument to harm me. The stones are the monument. So it's multiple stones. I call out I call on the God of our ancestors, the God of your grandfather Abraham, and the God of my grandfather Nahor to serve as judge between us. Now, this right here is proof of their belief, but it's double-minded. They have idols, but they also believe in the same God who is the creator of the universe, God. Um, because this is the same God of your grandfather Abraham and the God of my grandfather Nahor to serve as judge between us. He's not saying two different types of gods. He's saying the same God. Um, but what he's saying is like his ancestry comes from Nahor, your ancestry comes from Abraham. Same God that's going to watch over this covenant between us, that we're not going to pass by these stones. So Jacob took an oath before the fearsome God of his father Isaac to respect the boundary line. Then Jacob offered a sacrifice to God there on the mountain and invited everyone to a covenant feast. So Laban said his portion, right? But then Jacob took an oath. His oath is to respect the boundary line. I'm not gonna cross this. You're not gonna cross yours, but I'm for sure not gonna cross it. And that's why boundary lines are highly respected, um, because they're, it's somebody else's territory. If you don't have territory over that place, you have no rights to it, and you shouldn't be going into territory that you don't have rights to. So Jacob is acknowledging that I don't have rights beyond this territory to the north. I only have rights to the south, and I'm going to stay in my territory. So then Jacob offered a sacrifice to God there on the mountain and invited everyone to a covenant feast. So not only did they build the monument is a reminder, a physical reminder. He offered a sacrifice, the aroma that's pleasing to God. He offered a sacrifice there on the mountain. So he killed some sort of ram, goat, sheep type of thing and offered that on the mountain. After they had eaten, they spent the night on the mountain, this mountain where they offered this sacrifice and had this feast. They spent time up there, dwelling in the presence of God. They are reminding themselves of said covenant. Laban got up early the next morning and he kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home. He did all of that. One, I suppose you could say he wanted to say goodbye to his daughters and grandchildren. That was part of it. But mostly he wanted to pursue this idol. After he did not get the idol back, he came to some sort of consensus compromise of, all right, we're going to leave this in peace. I'm willing to leave it in peace. And that is how Laban and Jacob split ways. But remember, Jacob is married to Laban's daughters. So he also has to recognize and honor that marital covenant between his daughters. He has to, just do his part. So it's really important that, he continued to keep his word. It says something in one of those verses about him and who he was married to. I feel like we skipped that. This palace stones will stand as a witness to remind us of the covenant we have made. May the Lord keep watch between us to make sure we keep this covenant. If you mistreat my daughters or if you marry other wives, I'm pretty sure I read that, but maybe I started talking. But it says in verse 50, if you mistreat my daughters or if you marry other wives, God will see it, and even if no one else does. Yes, he is a witness to this covenant between us. So even with what he just told him, he's reminding him of the covenant. Like, you are not to even marry other wives because you already have my daughters as wives. So you're not even to take additional wives, which Jacob wasn't trying to do anyway. He probably tired of the ones he got. So he really wasn't trying to do that. But this is like an additional thing that even Laban is saying. God will see what you do. And if Laban is reminding him that God will see what you do, then, that says a lot, because Laban has not acted as though God has seen what he has done this whole time, but he has been reminded that God has seen what you have done to me this whole time. and He is going to take care of me. So no worries on that. So I hope that this was enjoyable for you, that you have learned something new, and that you seriously consider how you split with other people, what those relationships look like. They don't have to be a hard split, it doesn't have to be conflict. It can be amicable, it can be respectful. All relationships are not meant to be forever. Even though we could intend for them to be, sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. And when you have people, especially with character in question, it's probably not going to work out that way. So be blessed, stay safe, and I will see you on the next one.